Hello, this is Kerry Meldon. I'm here on another episode of Meldon Law and Friends, sitting in for my father, Jeffrey Meldon, who just got back from Miami over the weekend visiting my nephew, his grandson, and having a great time watching the Miami Dolphins win. So, Dad, I hope you had a good time and look forward to you coming back on the show and helping to interview all of our wonderful guests, which we have another great guest today we'll talk about in a few minutes. But before we do so, I want to get into the announcements, upcoming giveaways, and our events. So first of all, the Tom Petty Nation official Petty fan club formally announces the celebration of Tom Petty Weekend for 2023. The kickoff starts Friday, October 20th until October 22nd, and it's located at the Heartwood Soundstage near downtown Gainesville. There will be 3 nights of great live music and storytelling with attendees from all over the Grove. We are giving away 4 weekend passes to the Tom Petty Festival. To get these free passes, go to our website, meldonlaw.com. That's Meldon Law, MELDONLAW.com, and you can enter to win, and we hope to see you there. There's also, next weekend, a walk to end Alzheimer's. My father, Jeffrey, and his wife, Patricia, are co-chairing the executive committee for the Walk to End Alzheimer's event, which is going to be on October 21st, 2023. The event is going to be held at Trinity Methodist Church in Gainesville, and the registration starts at 9 a.m. The ceremony will be taking place at 10 a.m., with the walk itself to immediately follow. This year, the Alzheimer's Association's goal is to raise $140,000. For more information on this incredible event, please visit act.alz.org. That's act.alz.org. And be sure to keep an eye out on our Facebook page at Meldon Law, as we will be posting updates to the fundraising progress as we get closer to the event date. There is also a Battle at the Breach for Aubrey Hope event that's coming up. Family Traditions Constructions has partnered with Phoenix Fitness and other local businesses to bring this special event in honor of little Aubrey Hope. Aubrey Hope is a young child battling a rare, life-threatening cancer for a second time, and we are focused on helping her family during this very challenging time. Their annual Battle at the Beach weightlifting competition will be held at Eaton's Beach in Weirsdale, Florida on October 21st, and it will benefit Team Aubrey Hope. They invite all the public to come cheer on the contestants and to bid on raffles to win great prizes. We at Meldon Law, for example, are going to be donating a family 4-pack for the Gators Seminoles game that is going to occur on November 25th. So head on to Eaton's Beach to win some prizes and support this great cause for little Aubrey Hope. International Food and Music Festival is also happening October 21st. So all of these are coming up this weekend, it sounds like, gosh. Heritage Park is hosting the International Food and Music Festival. Admission is free, so come on down and take a local tour around the world through downtown Williston and experience food and music from various countries. It's from 11 a.m. until 4 p.m. this Saturday at Heritage Park in Williston, Florida. And finally, there is one event the following week in Wildwood, Florida, which is the Kids in Positive Places Trunk or Treat fundraiser event. And it's going to be held at it will be held at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Park, once again in Wildwood, and it's near the Villages, on October 28th from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. They're going to have games, music, face painting by some of the kids in the program, food, and lots of candy to give out to the children in hopes of raising awareness and support for kids in positive places. This program is about empowering and supporting youth in our community to make positive life choices to reach full potential. That seems very broad, but all very good. So come on out, bring the whole family, and we will look forward to seeing you there. So before we go forward with our interview, just to remind the listeners out there at Meldon Law, we help everyone in the North Central Florida community that's been injured as a result of a serious accident. Consultations are absolutely free, and you can come into our office and meet with us in person. We are local, and we have offices in Gainesville, Ocala, and Lake City. So the next guest that we're going to have on the show after the break, Hawke Forbes, owner of Forbes Funeral Home. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Jeffrey, what are you doing?
Well, I'm joining the band, of course. Since Meldon Law is the official law firm partner of the Florida Gators, I want to help.
Dad, we're litigators. Let's stick to helping people in the courtroom.
Well, can we still hang out and jam a little bit? At Meldon Law, we won't back down.
I was going down a one-way street and a girl that was driving her car T-boned me on my scooter. I ended up going for an MRI and discovering that I had 2 herniated discs. Coming to Cary allowed me to not have to worry about what doctor I was going to see or what physical therapist I had to go to. They say, these are the people we trust. You're going to have a great experience there. And I honestly did each time.
Call Meldon Law. Your consultation is absolutely free.
I was driving behind a lady, and very suddenly she moved out of the way. There was a log laying in the road, and when I hit my brakes, I went on top of the log. I had 2 herniated discs. I just haven't been the same since. Jeffrey Meldon fought for me all the way. Him and his team really went there for me. Throughout the whole lawsuit, he made sure that my bills was paid. It was never no whenever I called him and asked him for something.
Call Meldon Law right now.
And I was in an accident. Someone ran a red light and hit me, and I was hurt. You don't know where to turn. Luckily, I called Jeffrey. These big insurance companies, they don't want you to win. They truly don't. But Jeffrey and his firm and the people that work here, they just really fight for you. You call the law offices of Jeffrey Meldon, because you're going to need help, and they will help you.
Call Meldon Law right now.
Hey, Sammy, look who's there. Say hi.
Hey!
You again.
Meldon Law, Jeffrey speaking.
Jeffrey!
Somebody else hit us
Yeah.
Here we go again.
Okay, welcome back to Meldon Law and Friends. This is our podcast we started during COVID, and we have been producing it every week, and we've had incredible guests that have been able to come up from North Central Florida, all parts of North Central Florida, and talk about what they do with the community, what they do with their businesses, a little bit about their background, about who they are, and we're really happy to have another incredible guest today. Without further ado, I'll introduce our next guest, Hawke Forbes, owner of Forbes Funeral Home.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, Hawke, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
All
Appreciate
right.
y'all taking the time out to have me.
Absolutely. We love having you here, even if you're surrounded by Gator helmets here.
I
But
thought I would stir the pot a little bit this afternoon.
just so the listeners out there, we're at Steve Spurrier's restaurants, the podcast room. It's a pretty incredible restaurant.
No, it really is.
I
haven't been here before, and that's
Well, that's worth the drive itself. They got a museum over there, and actually Spurrier and Bobby Bowden became tight friends.
That's right.
Towards the end of Bobby Bowden's life, and although they competed, they had a lot of respect for each other.
They did.
So I think Bobby would have been proud of Steve of opening this homage, this place. So
yeah, two all-time greats for sure.
So if we see Steve walking by, we may have to wave him down, and you can show him your shirt, see what he has to say. He'll pop in and make a comment.
Cool.
But that being said, you are from Tallahassee, right?
That's right.
Okay.
All my family was from over in the Panhandle, south of Tallahassee, Wilcola County, and I was born there in Tallahassee, and we moved not long after I was born. But
great. Did you go? So after you were in Tallahassee, your parents were deciding like where they wanted to go, and they were looking at some other places in Florida, correct?
That's right. We traveled around a lot for Dad's work. He was a funeral director from the time, he's been licensed since about 91, so we traveled around working for different funeral homes. Okay. And we ended up in Jacksonville, is where we spent most of the time until we moved to Baker County.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And Baker County, of course, is is home to they're pretty dang good. They used to have a dang good football team when I was growing up, but
they're competitive. Got some growing pains, but they're competitive.
And you're currently in Macclenny, right?
That's right.
And now instead of working for any other funeral homes, you guys got your own own home.
That's right.
So tell me a little bit about how that started.
So Dad, like I said, he traveled around working. We moved a few times, and he worked for several independent funeral homes, and then went to work for a corporate funeral home, and kind of just picked up things along the way, and decided he'd implement his own plan and open his own place with things he had learned along the way. And we'd been living there in Macclenny for about 6 years at that time, and he decided we'd open up our own place there in Macclenny, and that was in 2010.
That's not that long ago. So you guys are
relatively new.
You guys are about 13 years in, but the good news is that once you get past 5 years, then that means you got a business that's working.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
That's what they say.
There's growing pains in the beginning.
That's it.
So tell me, when did you get involved in the funeral home?
That's the only thing I've ever done. I've never had another job. Never worked for. Never had to do any fast food or anything like that. It was from the time I was about 12 years old. There was something found for me to do around the funeral home. So. I don't know anything different. So
you're it's in your blood.
Yeah, I'd like to say that.
Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about well, first of all, obviously being a funeral director you hold a lot of different positions. It's not just like one thing that you're doing. You're obviously having to deal with families that are grieving. You're dealing with making preparations for the funeral. The embalmment. I mean, there's probably about 10 or 15 things
a lot of roles that go into
that you guys are doing.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about
the funeral director position itself. I mean, many hats you have to wear, and it's the forefront is dealing with the families and trying to put together something that best represents who's passed away as far as the service goes, and being understanding about who this person was. And then keeping it within means of what the family wants to do. A lot of people don't want some big extravagant service. Some people want to keep it small and simple, or a little bit more intimate. It just depends. It's case by case, really.
Right, and obviously you're dealing with a lot of. I don't know how many cemeteries there are in the area, but there's probably
it's a lot of those old country cemeteries. That's the majority of what we deal with, unless we go into Jacksonville. So
how do you deal with what's your interaction with the cemeteries, if at all, or is that mostly the family's deal?
No, we're pretty hands-on with the cemeteries as well. I know most of the sextons over all the cemeteries there in the county, and there are people that we either go to church with, or we're neighbors with, or we see in the store from time to time. So I mean, pretty good relationship with everybody there that's involved.
I mean, that's great. I mean, the personal relationships when it comes to these type of things are really important because the families are they don't know what to do. I mean, no one knows how to deal with death until it happens.
That's right. That's right.
And I remember my mom passed away suddenly, and I was like, I didn't want to have to deal with.
It's the last thing you want to deal with.
It's the last stuff you want to deal with. And what you guys do is provide an incredible service, because you're dealing with people who are vulnerable.
That's right.
And you're making them feel safe.
And that's what our goal is, to provide a safe area, safe space for folks in like you said, a vulnerable time. And a lot of that's kind of the benefit to independently owned funeral homes versus corporate owned funeral homes, because there's some good and some get bad on both sides. But we're able to, we don't have to answer to some board somewhere. We're independent, so we play by our own.
You can do right. You guys are able to move as you need to move based upon the circumstance, because every family has different needs or desires.
Exactly.
Well, is there anyone else from the family other than you and your father that are working?
My dad's been a licensed funeral director since 1991 here in the state of Florida, and then I graduated school and working towards my license now. I've graduated with my degree, just working on the licensing part.
Nice.
So on the day-to-day things, I'm overseeing the management part, and he's there to guide me along the way, and it gives him a little bit of time off too, me being there. So.
Would that be a licensed mortician or
licensed funeral director and embalmer?
Okay, so how long does that take usually to get that license?
Schooling was about 2 years, about 18 months, and then you have to do your prereqs before that, of course, like any associate's degree.
Okay, and then do you have to take a test or?
Yep, there's a state test and a national boards test.
Oh wow!
So those are what I'm working towards.
Okay,
right now.
So you're putting in the prep time to get the license. Would it be you and your father be the only licensed?
I've got some contacts. We have a couple fellows that are partially retired that'll come in and fill in with us, and I've got a lot of part-time unlicensed staff that helps us on the day-to-day things like working services and visitations and that sort of thing, and outreach in the community. So,
well, honestly, it's something that we try not. The thing about funeral homes, we try not to think about them, right? Because it's like you associate it with some painful times.
that's right.
But at the end of the day, it does provide a valuable service in terms of closure.
Hopefully so.
And I can promise you that they're memorable times because everyone remembers where they were when that happened.
That's right.
Now, in terms of your family and Baker County, is this? Tell me a little bit about the Baker County community. What drew you guys to wanting to start your funeral home in Baker County?
Baker County is a real close-knit community. It's kind of what you think of whenever you talk about a small Florida town or a small town in the South. I want to say it's a traditional community. There's probably over 60 or 70 churches there. Everybody turns out for the football games on Friday nights. Everybody knows the sheriff. Everybody knows the fire chief. Everybody knows those people.
Right.
It's just a tight-knit community, and it's a nice place to be. It's a nice place to live.
It's something that you guys felt like there was a need for the funeral home back in 2010 when you guys opened
just an
up.
alternative,
Now you said there's some corporate funeral homes too that you guys have to deal with.
Not so much in Macclenny. Everybody in Macclenny, there's 5 funeral homes there in Macclenny, which is a lot for a small town, but it just happened to turn out that way. Most of your corporate funeral homes are going to be in bigger towns, so Jacksonville has corporate funeral homes, and we do go into their cemeteries at times and have to deal with them at times. So.
Gotcha. Well,
obviously play by the rules.
You got to play by the rules, right? I'm same way with what we have to do too. Okay, well, I think we got a few minutes before our first break. I want to talk a little bit about the different services that you offer. We touched on them a little bit.
Absolutely.
Kind of give me a rundown as to what the funeral service industry, what you do with Hawke, or I'm sorry, with Forbes Funeral Homes.
Yep, absolutely. To me, my heart is at the traditional funeral service, which would be your traditional funeral, sit down, burial. That's the heart of funeral service to me, especially in the South. But we also offer cremation options, which is on the rise. It's more affordable. It's a little bit more. There's more ways that you can handle a cremation as far as your services. It's not, you don't necessarily have to be in a church,
right,
or in a, can be in a setting like this.
Right.
Sure
it could be like a memorial
anywhere. Yeah.
Right.
And that's kind of what we're aiming towards, or what I'm trying to aim towards, is being. I like to say I want to do whatever the family wants to do.
Yeah.
So there's no cookie cutter service to me. I want to do, if the family has a unique wish, that's what I want to do. I want to make that happen. Whether that's we've had services, we've had boat captains pass away, and we've had him visitation in the fish house where they dock their boats and clean their fish when they came in for the day. And so whatever their wishes are, that's what we want to do. But we're servicing cremation and burial and really anything as far as memorials, receptions, any of that sort of thing.
This is kind of probably an odd question. You don't have to answer if you don't want
absolutely.
to. But what do you do when you got family members fighting over what to do? That must be something that is.
That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
That does come up, and it has come up. That's one of those things where I let them know that I'm not a family law firm. I don't get in the middle of that. So it's basically one of those
Figure
things.
it out and let me know.
Exactly.
We'll do what you guys come to a consensus on.
My goal at the end of the day is to make sure that the person that's passed away, that their life has been honored. That's our goal.
Yeah.
I'm not going to play middleman. That's one of those situations where I'll leave the room. You guys sit there and you kind of figured it out. Figure out what you can all agree on, and I'll come back in and then we can make that happen.
Do you have any suggestions based upon your experience and your family's experience on how families, generally the best processes go in terms of how you would recommend people handling it if something happened to their mother or their father?
Well, I think the best and easiest way to go about that is to have that tough conversation before somebody passes away. Ask mom or dad or grandpa or grandma what their wishes are. Write it down. That way when that death happens, there's not a frantic, chase. Well, I don't, grandma told me this or grandma told me that.
Right.
Well, here it is in writing. We know exactly what our wishes are. We had that conversation versus the guilt that may come along with, we decided to do this, but I'm afraid that's not what mama or grandma would have wanted.
Right. Or you've got, two siblings that want to do it one way and then another sibling that might want to go a different direction, and it causes strife within a family when they should be coming together.
Right. That's the last thing you want at that time. That's the last place for that.
Well, there you go. That's number one piece of advice, is to make sure you either get a will or figure out some type of accommodations of how you want to do things prior to passing away. Let's say in a situation where there's multiple siblings, a parent passes away, and there is no will or no declaration of how they want them to be disposed. What would you give those kids the advice on how to deal with it? When I say kids, they could be adult children, but
come together to make a decision that you think would honor your parents' life and do something within your means. We're not salesmen, at least not at our funeral home. We want to do something that allows you to carry on. You've got a lot of other bills to pay after you leave our funeral home. We want you to pick something that you can afford to do and something that you feel like honors your loved one. So whatever you're comfortable with doing is what we want to do.
Well, that's exactly what people should want. That's a great. And in terms of the, the process of getting started, is it does someone just call your funeral home? I mean, how does it start? I mean,
it just depends. The situations are different. Some people pass away, suddenly at car accident.
Right.
Some people die at home or in hospice, under a doctor's care, so they've kind of had time to prepare. So it's a call. It's a case by case situation. Every time it's totally different.
Well, we're going to go to a break in a few seconds. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about how people can contact you, what they should be, what information they should have at their, in front of them when they call you, and how generally the process works in terms of time and things of that nature.
Absolutely.
So let's go to our first break, and we'll be back and continue with Mr. Hawke Forbes.
Yes, sir.
All right, wonderful.
Jeffrey, what are you doing?
Well, I'm joining the band, of course. Since Meldon Law is the official law firm partner of the Florida Gators, I want to help.
Dad, we're litigators. Let's stick to helping people in the courtroom.
Well, can we still hang out and jam a little bit? At Meldon Law, we won't back down.
I was going down a one-way street and a girl that was driving her car T-boned me on my scooter. I ended up going for an MRI and discovering that I had 2 herniated discs. Coming to Cary allowed me to not have to worry about what doctor I was going to see or what physical therapist I had to go to. They say, these are the people we trust. You're going to have a great experience there, and I honestly did each time.
Call Meldon Law. Your consultation is absolutely free.
I was driving behind a lady, and very suddenly she moved out of the way. There was a log laying in the road, and when I hit my brakes, I went on top of the log. I had 2 herniated discs. I just haven't been the same since. Jeffrey Meldon fought for me all the way. Him and his team really went there for me. Throughout the whole lawsuit, he made sure that my bills was paid. It was never no whenever I called him and asked him for something.
Call Meldon Law right now.
And I was in an accident. Someone ran a red light and hit me, and I was hurt. You don't know where to turn. Luckily, I called Jeffrey. These big insurance companies, they don't want you to win. They truly don't. But Jeffrey and his firm and the people that work here, they just really fight for you. You call the law offices of Jeffrey Meldon, because you're going to need help, and they will help you.
Call Meldon Law right now.
Hey, Sammy, look who's there. Say hi.
Hey!
You again!
Meldon Law, Jeffrey speaking.
Jeffrey!
Somebody else hit us
Yeah.
Here we go again.
Okay, we are back here at Meldon Law and Friends. We've got our great guest, Hawke Forbes from Macclenny, Baker County, Florida, and he owns Forbes Funeral Home.
Yes,
so
sir.
we're happy to have him here today. we are going to forgive him for being a Knowles fan, but we were talking at the break that they are playing Duke this weekend, which is going to be a challenge, despite the fact that Florida State's probably won 95% of the games versus Duke in the past. When was the last time you guys lost to Duke?
It's hard.
Might be.
It could have happened in the last couple of years. It's been a rocky road here the last few seasons, but we're definitely on the uphill.
We're experiencing that right now.
Yeah.
So it just happens. Sometimes it goes up and down and up and down.
The Gators are definitely better this year, I think, than I expected them to be, at least. I think they're.
We love the Gators. I'm gonna hold reserve judgment until after they got a tough schedule between Georgia, LSU, Missouri, Florida State. Those are 4 very tough games, and then Arkansas is not a gimme either. So, we're happy with whatever happens.
That's right.
So we were talking a little bit about the process, and what we want to do is kind of talk a little bit about what would, in a situation where you had a loved one pass away, what do you do? Because no one really tells you that. You just kind of figure it out on your own.
That's right.
So, do you call the police first? Do you call your insurance company?
Sure.
Tell me generally how the process works.
So typically, depending on where somebody would pass away, if they would be at a hospital, obviously the police wouldn't have to be involved. They're under hospital's care, under a doctor's care. So at that time, the hospital is going to ask you, do you have a funeral home of choice? At which point, if you were to, choose us, they'd give us a call. And 9 times out of 10, I would be the one to come make my way and bring your loved one into our care. At that time, basically, we just get a general idea what kind of arrangements you're wanting, whether it be cremation or burial. The reason we ask that, and I hate asking it because I don't want people to think I'm already in their pockets.
Right.
We want to know if we're going to be embalming this person, or if we're not, or if we're going to be going straight under refrigeration, basically to prepare for the cremation process.
Because time is of the essence.
Exactly. Yeah. In that situation, it definitely is. And it can be an awkward question because people might think, asking for a certain reason.
You're already getting the process started, and they just are dealing with death.
And you're not wanting to rush anybody at that point, for sure. But that's kind of how it starts. And then we would typically set up for time to meet to make funeral arrangements after that. So you get on the phone, they call you, and it could be, I'm assuming most of the time this is not prearranged. They're just it's cold calling, unless you know the folks. Right.
But still, it's, they're calling if it's not expected, especially, and they say, what's the next step? What do you tell them other than the cremation versus the burial? What are some of the other things that you're talking to them about?
We're setting up time for them to come in, and we're letting them know, we're going to need information for a death certificate. We're going to need to know where mom and daddy was born, what their parents' names were. There's a list of information we have to submit to the state to file for the death certificate, and that's on every case, regardless of what kind of arrangements that you choose.
So do you guys file for the death certificate?
Yes.
Okay, so the hospital doesn't deal with it.
All we get from the hospital basically is who's the doctor that's going to be signing off on that
as
far as the cause of death.
And is there an autopsy generally done at the hospital, or does it depend?
It depends on the case. So somebody who would pass under hospice, per se, a lot of older people, luckily, they live this long life to be 90 years old, and they pass of natural causes under hospice care. So they're basically keeping them comfortable in those last days. There's no need for an autopsy at that point.
Right.
We've watched this person in their last days. They're, heart failure. They're 90 years old. So a doctor's going to sign off on that without needing an autopsy.
So the coroner would never examine that person?
No. They would come straight into our care at that time.
Now, what's the general time between the time of passing away to the time that it gets into your possession at the funeral home?
Typically pretty quick, unless they're going to the medical examiner's office or somewhere like that, or if they're out of town, for say. Like if I'm going from Macclenny, we still service a lot of families in Tallahassee area because my parents are from there. So, I'm driving from Macclenny to Tallahassee, but it's within hours, typically, within 24 hours at the very most, depending on where they're at.
And you guys do it, are able to get the body where it needs to go as quickly as possible to make sure it's preserved as well.
Absolutely.
Now, you talk, and this is interesting because I never thought about this. You talk about you don't want to rush the family into a decision. What happens when, someone calls you, you take them in, and later on they change their mind? Does that ever happen, or is it usually? It
does happen as far as the arrangements. A lot of the times, if we can't go ahead and get, if they can't make up their mind.
Or if they don't have money, or.
Sure.
Yeah.
We try to work with them whatever way we can as far as finances.
Okay.
always say we're not a bank, but I'm going to figure out how to help you however we can.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
But as far as if they're in between that decision of cremation and burial, most of the time we're just going to place their loved one under refrigeration until that decision can be made.
And what's the general maximum time period you want to make that decision?
Most of the time the decision is made within a day or two. You know,
Right.
it's at least to get a game plan on what we're doing. You know,
Gotcha.
we don't have to rush any services, but we want to at least know what direction we're going in.
So obviously, what you want to make sure is you're talking to the decision maker. Now,
The
do you
next
have?
of kin.
Do you have? Is that what you have an obligation to make sure it is the next of kin?
Absolutely. If it's not the next of kin, it's going to be somebody who has a legal executor of the state form. So somebody who's been left with documents that name them the executor of their estate. That would overrule the next of kin, but you don't see that so much.
So for the listeners out there, what is the order of the next of kin?
So the next of kin would be the spouse, and then after the spouse, it would be the child, and then after the child, it would be an adult child over the age of 18, and after that, it would be a parent, and then a sibling.
Okay, well there you go. That's good information too. So, a lot of this is taken care of you, even if you don't have a will. There's some defaults that you can look at.
That's right.
Now, what happens in a situation where there's, issues with, like you said, there's got to be some decision making that has to be done. You get an elderly couple, one of them passes away, the other one's elderly as well. Is there a situation where they can sign off the power of attorney to another family member to make decisions?
Well, their power of attorney, yes, they can appoint a child or a grandchild to at least make their decision. They kind of a waiver of rights is what they call that.
Can you help them with that, or is that something they have to do on their own?
We have those forms.
Okay.
We have access to those forms, and we can kind of guide them along that process. As long as basically it's not something we want everybody to come in and make arrangements. We want Grandpa there. We don't want somebody coming in and saying, "Well, Grandpa told me to take care of this."
Right.
Well, let me talk to
You want Grandpa to say, "Look, I don't want to deal with this. Let my son deal with it."
But I want to see Grandpa.
You want to make sure
Yeah.
and that's a responsible thing to do, because you want to make sure you can't undo. This is a permanent process,
Especially cremation.
Especially cremation.
Yeah. Irreversible.
So once you make a decision, let's say, okay, we're going to hire you. We want to do a burial. What's the next step in terms of the paperwork that they're going to be filling out?
We're going to take up that basic information for your death certificate. Like I said, on every case, that has to be done. Whether or not you're going to have a Servo 78 type, we have what we call direct cremation, just for example, where we're going to file for a death certificate, and we may or may not put together an obituary. We try to do that with everybody. It's easier for people to know, so-and-so's passed away. Let's get the word out.
Yeah.
But it can end right there at the death certificate. We can file the death certificate. The cremation process can take place after we get approval, and that can be that.
How long does that usually take?
Legally in the state of Florida, once we get the information from the family to get to the doctor, he legally has 72 hours, and there's some give or take in that.
Well,
sometimes it's quicker. Sometimes
I'm questioning you today, Hawke. You're going to get your, making sure we're getting you test ready.
That's right.
So 72 hours. And we were talking a little bit about, there are some insurance policies that sometimes will cover funeral costs that you need to be aware of, and you guys can kind of say if you have if it's an auto accident, there may be a wrongful death funeral expense.
Sure. Any kind of life insurance policies, we invite families to bring them in, and we'd be more than happy to help them file that. We try to put as little on the family as we can. Try to take as much burden off their shoulders as possible.
Even if they get the money on the back end and they have to front the money on the front end, they can figure it out. And you were talking about financing. Tell me a little bit about those options that people have if they want to call your funeral home.
As far as financing, like I said, we don't do too much financing. I like to say we're not a bank, but we like to try to find whatever option. There's some wiggle room in things and pricing. We have funerals basically range. Our funeral home of standard traditional full burial starts from about $8,000, and that would be for everything with a cemetery, everything you basically need.
What about the whole bells and whistles package?
That's a pretty respectable funeral at our place.
Okay.
Like I said, I don't like to dig in people's pockets.
Right.
We want you to be able to carry on and pay the bills you got to pay after you leave us.
Unless it's J.C. Penney's relatives, right?
Whatever we need.
Are they from that area, neck of the woods?
They're from Penny Farms retirement communities down there in Grand Coast Springs. Not too far.
It's not too far.
About 35, 40 minutes. But you still got to pay your mortgage bill.
Yeah.
The car note's still going to come the next month. And once you see us, that's, we may or may not see each other again. I don't want you to say, man, he really stuck it to us.
You want to treat people fairly, so that you can look them in the eye when you're going to the
At
game
the
or
grocery
church
store,
or the grocery,
right.
and you want to be able to say you got
Absolutely.
You did exactly. You got what you paid for.
Exactly.
So that is, and obviously, like some people, they may not have $8,000 or $10,000 in cash. Can they use a credit card or
Absolutely.
Okay.
Any kind of credit card, check. If you have your own financing, I know there's some companies out there that will help families finance
Funerals,
final
yeah.
expenses and that sort of thing.
Well, and a lot of times what they're trying to do is finance it, and then they'll get the proceeds from the estate,
Sure.
and they can
Right.
get it back on the back
Yeah.
end. It just doesn't happen immediately.
Right.
Whereas the funeral has to,
Kind of has to be paid.
it has to be done.
Yeah.
What's the general turnaround time in terms of services from time of death?
Traditionally, from the time of death to a traditional burial, or what we call just a traditional funeral, casket, everything, is normally around 4 to 5 days typically. It can be faster than that. It can be arranged to be faster than that. And I mean, it can also be put off from time. Just the necessary steps have to be taken.
And what happens? I mean, obviously, there's the procession. There's got to be, sometimes I've seen police officers or people.
That's right.
So tell me a little bit about how that's organized.
The day of the service, as far as that goes, whether we're leaving from the funeral home, if we're having it there in our chapel or in one of the community churches, we set a service for this time, and then we get in touch with the sheriff's office, the day or two in advance, and say, hey, we're going to need a procession, escort from X church to X cemetery. And luckily there in Baker County, our sheriff's office is gracious enough to provide that at no charge.
Wow.
So it's kind of
Good for that sheriff. Who's the sheriff there?
Sheriff Scotty Roden.
All right, Sheriff Roden, you got props for that. So.
Absolutely. And that's just part of everybody kind of looking after each other in a small town.
Yeah.
That's the least you can do for somebody in that time.
Yeah.
And it prevents accidents from happening on the roadways. We're leaving, we've got 30 cars with us.
Yeah.
Flashing lights. It can be confusing to people who aren't familiar with that. So we got a couple of deputies blocking the intersection so we can get through without any hiccups or anything like that.
Yeah. That's so, and you're responsible for getting that.
We line all that up.
And we were talking a lot earlier. You also do embalming as well. Is that correct?
Yep. Everything's in house.
Yeah.
My dad's our licensed funeral director right now, so he handles all of our embalming, all of that.
Wow.
And that's kind of his specialty.
And it's kind of like a business where you got to be ready on the spot. You never know when you're.
24/7.
I mean, so what happens if someone calls you at 6 a.m. in the morning? Do you guys have an answering service or anyone that can?
We did have an answering service, and I just decided that since I'm going to be the one to have to spring in action, that I'm going to cut the middleman out, and I'm just going to. So
Well,
I have the phones 24/7. So
you got the man right here.
Yeah.
So you got a 24/7 care. That's great.
absolutely. So if you call at 4 o'clock in the morning, you're going to talk to me.
You married yet?
No, not yet.
Okay, when you get married, you may rethink that. But for now, you're doing the right thing.
I like to be the point of contact, because if you're going to deal with me, I like to be the first person you see. I like to be the first person.
You want to let them know that it's your name's on the building.
That's
it's
right.
your funeral home, and that you take pride in making sure that they're taken care of the right way.
That's right.
Which is how it should be, right?
That's the way I feel.
So I feel the same way. Well, I think before we end the session, I want to talk a little bit about how people can contact you if they do want to talk to you about, maybe getting a. I don't know. I know that you wouldn't. Would you be dealing with plots, or would that be just a cemetery itself?
I can get them in touch with whoever they want to get in touch with.
Okay. Well, then so anything you
Absolutely.
need with regards to planning in the future,
Absolutely.
you can call Hawke. Hawke, how do people contact? What's the best way to contact you?
So you can contact me on the phone or swing by our office. We're there in Macclenny. We're on what everybody knows as Beaver Street if you're from Jacksonville, but it's US 90. US 90 runs straight across the state.
Yep.
409 West Macclenny Avenue, kind of in the heart of Macclenny. And I'm available on the phone. Our office phone is 904-259-4600.
And you'll answer that phone call.
It'll be me.
All right. Well, can you repeat that number one more time?
904-259-4600, or you can reach me on my cell phone even, 904-403-3724.
And what area of the state are you able to provide services?
If you call me from Miami, I'll be there.
All right. Well, there you
Doesn't
go.
matter to me.
So
Wherever there's a
Gainesville,
need.
Ocala, Macclenny, Lake City, Wakulla, wherever
That's
the
right.
people are calling, you can show up.
Yep, I'll be there.
right.
Wherever there's a need.
Well, Hawke, we appreciate you coming on today. Absolutely. It was a great interview as always.
Appreciate your time.
You know, we're always happy to have some interesting guests. We want to thank you for your appearance.
Absolutely.
And we'll end this episode of Meldon Law and Friends.